From Walden University's Career Services Center, welcome to Disabilities to Abilities, Turning Challenges into Career Success. I am Dina Berggren, a member of your Walden Career Services Advising Team. During today's session, we will explore a wide range of resources and strategies to boost your confidence and maximize your chances of success. Before we delve into our program, I'd like to introduce you to the Career Services Center team. For those of you who are not familiar with the Career Services Center, here is a slide of our team members. I'm Dina Berggren on the left. Nicole Skalski is also joining us on this program to help field some of our questions. We all work out of the Minneapolis office, and our mission is to educate, coach, and advise our learners to proactively manage their careers. Joining us today is also Senior Director of Disability Services, Carolyn Roney. Carolyn, welcome to the program.
Hi, everyone.
Carolyn Roney has served as the Director and Senior Director of Disability Services at Walden for over 10 years. She runs the day-to-day operations of the Disability Services Office, ensuring students with disabilities have the accommodations they need to access all university programs and services. In addition to that, she works with course developers to incorporate concepts of universal design in the creation of new online courses and course materials. Prior to Walden, Carolyn worked for 11 years as Director of Disability Services at Metropolitan State University in St. Paul, Minnesota, and for 5 years at St. Paul Technical College as a sign language interpreter. Carolyn has a Master of Arts degree in Education Administration, and she's also an active member of the Association of Higher Education and Disability. Joining us on this program is also Legrand Ouabo, who will be sharing his career story with us later in the program. And Legrand is a Master of Arts in Teaching alumnus and a PhD in Education student at Walden, who is working as a special education teacher in the DC public schools. His broad experience spans over 14 years as an educator and advocate for people with disabilities, and in his native country of Cameroon, Legrand served for over 11 years as a lead teacher at Douala Technical High School. He is a published author of the book Beyond Stairs and an avid singer. Legrand, welcome to the program.
Hey, everyone, and thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. We're very honored to have you on our program here today. And with these introductions, we will now move on to our objectives. Today, we'll learn how to strengthen your brand by conveying confidence to employers. We'll explore ability-friendly employers, virtual jobs, and job search resources, discuss if and when to disclose a disability during the job search, and finally, we will prepare for interviews by handling difficult questions and addressing accommodations. To help us get started, let's find out more about you, the audience. And Nicole will help us launch a poll. So the poll is now open. So who is joining us here today? Are you currently employed and not seeking new opportunities at this time? Are you currently employed and considering a change in the near future? Maybe you're in between jobs and seeking new opportunities or re-entering the workforce, or maybe other. So we'll just give it a minute for all of you to make a selection, and we'll take a look. Okay, so the numbers are, okay, changing here. So we'll just give it a second more and close the poll, and then share the poll results. So it looks like 35% are currently employed and considering a change in the future. 26% are in between jobs and seeking new opportunities. And we have folks also who are re-entering the workforce. And some of you are currently employed and not seeking new opportunities. So you're comfortable where you are now. So thank you for this input. And also, many of you are facing challenges due to your disability on today's program. And you are not alone. Because according to the U.S. Census Bureau, over 19.5 million working age Americans ages 16 to 64 have a disability. And this is about 1 out of 10 U.S. residents, or 10% of the entire working age population. The Americans with Disabilities Act protects individuals with disabilities and guarantees equal employment opportunities. However, as many of you already know from your firsthand experience, people with disabilities are faced with many additional challenges in the workplace. Employment is not always equal. For instance, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, 34.7% of people with a disability ages 16 to 64 were employed in 2009, as compared with 71.9% of people without a disability. At the same time, employers are seeking the most qualified candidates to fill positions. As Walden students and skilled professionals, you can bring many of your gifts, talents, and contributions to the workplace. You can maximize your chances of success by learning to face and overcome barriers to employment. So this is the focus of our webinar here today. Athlete and Guinness World Records holder Robert Hensel once said, "I choose not to place this in my ability." We will discuss ways to help you take control of your job search and maximize your chances of career success. Effectively marketing yourself to employers includes accentuating the positive elements of your brand or what is unique about you. A Cornell University study on disability employment policies and practices identified the top barriers to employment for people with disabilities. Did you know that the top 2 barriers were, number 1, a lack of related experience, and number 2, a lack of required skills or training? Notice that these challenges apply to applicants with or without disabilities. So even if you've been defined or limited by your disability in the past, I encourage you to assess other aspects of who you are and identify the many contributions you can make in the workplace. For instance, ask yourself these questions. What skills do you bring? Maybe writing, research, communication, technical skills. What prior paid or unpaid experience have you gained through the years? What training or certifications have you completed? And also remember the knowledge you've gained through your Walden program. Your interests and hobbies, your strength or what you're best known for or naturally good at. What your contribution is at work, at home, or in your community. Your personality traits. Are you caring, collaborative, intuitive? And of course, your positive attitude and your enthusiasm. And also your resiliency and your ability to thrive during difficult times. Many times your disability can become part of your positive attributes. So for instance, you may have developed stronger problem-solving skills than other people. So ask yourself, what unique skills have I gained from my experience? And Carolyn, could you give an example of communicating strength related to a disability?
Sure. When you're talking to a potential employer, you want to present whatever skills, as you've been reflecting on what skills you have. Like Dina said, probably problem solving. You've had a lot more experience problem solving than the average person because of a disability. You want to present that in a professional way, and the term that we typically use is disability management. So think of your own disability management. What have you done to manage the disability in your daily life? Not necessarily even an employment situation, but if you have that experience, certainly bring that to the forefront of your mind when you're assessing yourself and you want to accentuate the positive. You want to present the fact that you have experienced challenges and you've overcome them. You know how to manage them in a professional way. So I think just keeping, looking through your own experiences for those skills that you can interpret as disability management, you can translate those to job skills and present them that way.
Thank you, Carolyn. And also, after this session, you may want to take some time to write down your strength and refer back to them during your job search. If you'd like to access additional self-assessment tools, you can also visit Career Services Center's Self-Knowledge page and complete the free Interests, Skills, and Strengths assessments. And after you take those steps to assess your strengths, the next step is to tap into the many resources that are available to you. And some of these include government resources such as disability.gov, the Job Accommodation Network, and your state vocational rehabilitation. In the past, I helped a student contact a VR representative for advice on disability-friendly field experience sites. And the VR rep was extremely helpful and provided several potential sites for the student to contact. So reach out to your vocational rehabilitation folks there. And other ideas include researching disability-friendly employers and exploring specific job banks for people with disabilities. Several disability-friendly options include positions in the government sector, such as the VA, or nonprofit jobs, even through organizations that serve people with disabilities. Online teaching is an option, freelance and entrepreneurship, and virtual employment. And in general, virtual jobs are continuing to grow as technology advances. The added benefit of working virtually is that many times it removes the issue of disability altogether because people may not even know that you have a disability in a virtual environment. And again, these are only a few ideas for you on where to seek employment. Please refer to our comprehensive handout that is provided to you in your handouts section for a list of job banks and resources to further research these options. And Carolyn, do you have anything else to add about that?
Well, I like your point about the potential for virtual jobs. And for many Walden students with disabilities, they chose Walden because of the online education. They probably chose online education in part, at least, because of the disability situation. So what about that can be transferred to the employment situation? And what successes have you had in the online education that you can talk about to a potential virtual an employer at a virtual employment site? You've already you can already demonstrate that you have the technological ability to be successful in the complicated online educational environment. You can transfer that same skill and experience to another virtual environment. Of course, not everyone's going to choose a virtual job, but it's just another one of those things that you can sit back and think about. How can I present the successes I've had in managing my own disability and making professional choices like choosing an online education? How can I present that to a potential employer and sell myself that way?
These are great insights, and I think it's very true because you want to expand your options, and online learning is one of those options, and transferable skills from your Walden programs are very valuable out there. So along with self-assessment and research, you also want to consider growing and expanding your networking activities. Did you happen to know that 70 to 80% of jobs are obtained through networking? This is something to consider as you work to create a job search strategy for yourself. To help expand your network, you may want to join a networking or support group to share ideas and opportunities with others. Meetups allow you to network with individuals with common interests in your community. And remember, there are many people out there who are experiencing similar feelings, frustrations, and working to overcome their barriers. I also recommend finding a mentor or several mentors. Ideally, someone who works in the same industry and has a similar disability. Or become a mentor and help someone else. Remember that there are others who can gain from your experience, your knowledge, and wisdom. Carolyn, could you share a networking story with us?
Well, as you're talking, I'm thinking you might think it's hard to find someone who is in the same field as you and also has the same disability, but they're out there and they're working, and so they have something to share with you and you have something to share with them. And now in today's our age of technology where everybody can reach out to those of similar interests through just Googling them for lack of another process, it's easy to do. I have an experience here at Walden. When I first started at Walden, our counseling program we had a process where students had to practice giving assessments, so like a neuropsych assessment. So the student, I don't know if most people have probably not done this, but it's similar to an IQ test, a part of it where there'll be blocks in front of you and the administrator of the test manipulates the blocks, and then the person who's taking the test has to mimic that behavior. And anyway, the process of giving this test required vision. You had to be able to observe your client while they were doing these block manipulations and some other things. And so we had a blind student in the counseling program, and they were saying to her, you can't be in this program because visual observation is a requirement, and the ability to administer these tests is a requirement. So we looked, in my role as disability director, I wasn't sure about that, and I wanted to find out more, so I looked around and I found a person who was working as a psychologist and an educator, I think it was in the University of North Dakota, who was blind. And he said, no, you don't actually have to be able to give the test. You have to be able to interpret the results. Someone else can give the test. The psychologist has to be able to interpret the results. And so anyway, we fixed that about Walden's program. That's one thing we did. But in that process, I got to connect this student who was blind and going into the field of psychology with a professional in the field, and actually that relationship developed into a really good networking opportunity for that student. So the odds of us finding someone like that, you might think are rare, but no, they're out there, and in our global community, they're definitely out there. So look, see what you can do to find someone in the same field or the general field and with similar disabilities, and you'll have a lot to share with each other.
And it's easier these days to connect because of the technology. And in addition to the face-to-face networking and mentoring, you can also connect through social media to help you connect with people with similar goals and interests and challenges. And LinkedIn right now is the largest professional networking site, and it allows you to build and maintain connections and also join LinkedIn groups. So here is a screenshot of several groups related to disabilities. You can see here there's Disability Advocates, Disability.gov, Diversity and Disability at Work, and many others. And other groups are American Association for People with Disabilities group, that's a great one, and the National Vocational Placement Network, and so many others to check out on LinkedIn. And Carolyn, are there other online networking options that you'd recommend for students?
Well, all of them, anything you can find, but there are blogs out there, so specific. Just if you just Google disability blogs, you'll find a lot of them. I know one of them is enabled by design, and in that blog, people talk about how to use universal design to make their employment situation more accessible, and along with a lot of other discussions go on in that blog. Disability Intel is another blog kind of focused on assistive or technological solutions. And there are a lot of them. You'll find some of them, there's people, like in any blog, there's people who just are on there to complain. So you don't want to focus on those negative things, but focus on the contributions of people who have some solutions and the opportunity to network. Find people in your field that are that have disabilities and have worked that way. So blogs are a good option.
Thank you, Carolyn. And then for preparing for career success, your career success depends on how well you're able to present yourself to employers. So this is really important to consider. And to help with this, you really want to practice your assertiveness skills and learn how to ask for what you want. And this may also include improving your public speaking skills or writing skills and practicing communicating clearly to employers. You also want to practice how you introduce yourself to others based on your interests, skills, and strengths. An elevator pitch is a 30-second introduction that can help build confidence when networking with others face-to-face. Practice how you will introduce yourself to people who you meet and work on creating a positive first impression. And finally, fine-tune your brand or what is unique about you by working on your professional image and how others perceive you. And informational meetings are other great ways to make a positive impression in a non-interview context. Then, when an opportunity arises, you have already built a networking relationship. Contact people who work in your future role and ask for 20 to 30 minutes of their time to discuss their career path and share resources, and get referrals from former coworkers, friends, and family. And most of all, stay connected and continue to build your relationships. Ask people you've met with to connect with you on LinkedIn and keep them updated on your successes and your accomplishments. And before setting on a career direction, test out the waters first. Volunteer to gain experience in your future field or build your needed skills. Some excellent volunteer sites include idealist.org, volunteermatch.org, there's the Walden University Service Network, and many others. Virtual volunteering is becoming more and more popular. Onlinevolunteering.org is an organization which offers global volunteering opportunities to perform virtual tasks such as writing and editing, research, training and coaching, project development, and many other high-end tasks. And Volunteer Match and Service Leader are also sites where you can search for virtual volunteering opportunities. So there's a lot out there to explore, and we provide a comprehensive list of volunteer sites on the Career Services Center website under the Resources tab, and we have a link to that in your handout as well. Now we'd like to switch gears a bit and talk about the tough questions that may come up during the job search process. In today's competitive job market, you often get only one chance to make a positive first impression. How do you best prepare yourself? Let's ask the following question to help us get started. And we're going to go ahead and launch another poll. So, when should I disclose? You are not required to disclose your disability, Delay disclosure as long as possible unless it works to your advantage. Don't disclose on applications unless it affects the job or any of the above. What do you think? What is the right answer? And again, we'll give it just a minute for you to respond to the poll, and then we will share the results. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results with you. So 52% of you said any of the above, and that is the correct answer. The purpose of your application is to get you to the next step of the process, which is the interview. And we generally recommend not to disclose on the resume, cover letter, or application unless it is to your benefit. For instance, if you are targeting a disability-friendly employer like the VA hospital, you may want to disclose on your application. Otherwise, we suggest that you do not disclose. But keeping that in mind, when to disclose also depends on your particular situation. So Carolyn, let's say a person uses a wheelchair full-time and wants to avoid surprise at the time of an interview by giving the employer heads up. Should this person disclose on his cover letter or resume? What would be the best approach?
No, they shouldn't disclose on their cover letter or resume. The best approach is, first of all, to do your own homework and know where the interview is going to be, what the site looks like. Maybe go there if it's open to the public. Look around, see where the elevators are. All of those things. Do some research up front, and then at the time of the interview, if there's any concerns, you'll want to say when you're making the appointment for the interview over the phone, I do use a wheelchair. I've been to your site. I've looked around. I know I'll be able to get to your meeting room with the elevators that they're there. It's a very accessible building, whatever. I just wanted to let you know, give you a heads up in case the room itself might be crowded or something. We might need to move to a different room. Show that you're in control. You've done your research. This is an opportunity even at that phone, setting up the appointment for the interview. Even if you're not talking to the boss, you're still presenting yourself as a professional who can manage the disability and has done the research necessary to make it work. But as far as when to disclose, I think it's appropriate at that time when you're preparing for the interview, especially if you have noted there is an accessibility problem when you've gone to visit the place and there's no elevator or there's no way to get into the building. Then you are going to want to call, and again, you're going to want to say, this shouldn't be an issue. We can meet somewhere else. I'll be happy to meet you here or there where it is accessible, something like that. So hopefully you're not going to run into an inaccessible spot, but just another opportunity to demonstrate your professionalism and management.
Great, Carolyn. So it sounds like you're really advising to come up with solutions and workable solutions for employers. And
present options, yes.
Absolutely.
More than one if you can.
And that is very, very important advice. And let's say a person has an invisible disability, like maybe a brain injury or a mild form of autism, and it may show up in minor ways during the interview. Should this person mention this on his or her resume or cover letter? What would be the best approach?
Again, I don't think it's ever appropriate to put it on the resume or cover letter. And if it's invisible, I don't think that in that case, you really do have to kind of play it by ear. Everybody's different. If you're pretty sure it's going to show up in the interview, certain mannerisms or delays in speech or something like that that are caused by the disability, and you've had enough experience where you know this is going to be noticeable, then yes, you should have a prepared 2-sentence explanation. You might notice I struggle with this minor communication glitch, whatever it is, use a professional term, but I can manage it this way or that way, or you want to practice that, work with professionals or your own career, call somebody here at Walden's Career Services to go over sort of a quick 2-sentence explanation and another opportunity to kind of take charge and show that you can handle it. But if it's not going to show up, except in rare situations, I wouldn't mention it at all. It's best not to disclose unless you have to.
Great. Thank you, Carolyn. And the next common question is, what if I encounter accessibility issues or need accommodations during the interview? And according to the ADA, an employer is required to provide reasonable accommodations for the job interview unless they cause undue hardships or are, in other words, too difficult or too expensive. So reasonable accommodations may include providing materials in accessible formats, providing readers and sign language interpreters, ensuring interviews are held in accessible locations, adjusting application policies or procedures, and many others. So generally, our advice would be is to, number one, prepare the recruiter so there are no issues before or during the interview, and number two, offer low-cost solutions. So Carolyn, what advice would you give a person who is in a wheelchair and may have difficulties entering the building where an interview is scheduled to be held?
Well, like I said, if you've done your research and you found out the building was inaccessible or the room was somehow inaccessible, address that before the interview. Don't let it be a surprise at the time. Call up and say, this is what I've discovered, and so here are some options. This has happened to me before, and I am totally capable of handling this. Let me show you how well. So you present it like that, not accusing people. This is not accessible, and you can get in trouble with the law. That's not what you want to talk about to a potential employer. You want to just show that you've got this under control, you can manage it. You may want to address it at a future time, but for the interview, when this is your opportunity to sell yourself, you want to say, here are some options. I'll be happy to meet you somewhere else in another building, or I think the building itself is accessible, but this particular room seems to be the challenge. Is there another room, a conference room, that we could reserve to meet, that kind of thing?
Wonderful. And what advice would you give someone who is deaf and has recently received an invitation to interview for a job and is not sure how to ensure that a sign language interpreter is available for the interview?
Yeah, now you're talking about somebody having to spend money. And so it can change, the things can change a little bit when somebody has to spend money. And like you said, you do have to be assertive. It is the employer's responsibility to hire an interpreter for a job interview. And so my first recommendation would be to call up the employer through a relay service or an interpreter and say, we have an appointment scheduled, an interview scheduled. I do use a sign language interpreter for communication, and so I wanted to make sure we can make those arrangements. Here is the phone number to call, the referral service to get the sign. Be prepared to educate the employer in a friendly way. Explain this is, assume they know this is their responsibility, and just provide the resources. I have a friend who is a sign language interpreter who would be happy to work for a minimal fee or whatever. You want to provide the resources so that the employer knows you're on top of the issue and can manage your disability. It might even be an opportunity to say, once I'm on the job, I really won't need a sign language interpreter except for maybe the monthly training meetings or something like that. So it'll be good for us to have this experience of hiring an interpreter service for this kind of thing, and here's the typical rate. You can provide that kind of information, but let them know in some way that it's their responsibility. If they don't accept that responsibility, again, you don't want to start threatening litigation and that kind of thing. If you want that job, well, first of all, if they don't take that responsibility, then maybe you don't want that job. But if you want that job and you feel like there's an opportunity to educate them into changing their mind about this, then you could pay for it yourself and address it at a if you got the job, then address the need for an interpreter at a later date as far as who pays for it. So there's a couple different ways to handle it, but you should practice beforehand having your presentation of the disability management strategy, in this case using a sign language interpreter, and have the resources at your fingertips where you can refer the employer to that. Just another opportunity to show that you can manage the situation.
Great, thank you, Carolyn. And then what happens if you enter a room and you sense that your interviewers are somehow uncomfortable, like there is an elephant in the room? You may have experienced this situation before. Your interviewers may have conscious or unconscious emotions because of your disability, and they may include curiosity or guilt or prejudice or ignorance or others. Your goal is to put your interviewer at ease and prove that you're the best person for the job. To do this, I suggest using a friendly, matter-of-fact approach to briefly address your disability and then move on to other topics. Here's an example. Before we get started, you may notice that I have no movement in my left arm. My arm has been like this since birth, but I have compensated with my right arm. I've had more practice problem solving than other people. Now let me tell you more about myself, and then move on to discussing your abilities to perform the job. And now to our next question. How can you best demonstrate your abilities? Here are a few ideas. Ask to give a demonstration of how you can complete aspects of the job. And if this is impractical, share an experience or example from your last job that describes how you were able to complete the tasks. Anticipate anything in the job description the interviewer may be worried about, such as physical mobility, safety, and motor coordination. And explain to them how you've adapted in these areas or will overcome these obstacles. Remember, your role is to educate the employer on how you're the best person for the job and are able to perform the essential job functions. And also utilize references who can testify on your ability to do the job. Previous teachers, counselors, employers, supervisors, and others, and create a career portfolio and use it to showcase your work samples. If your ability is not visible and you will not affect the interview, our general advice is to disclose, number one, after receiving an offer, and number two, only if it will affect the job. So, however, there are many variables, and if you truly believe your disability may impact your performance on the job, you want to take control, address the problem, and offer solutions before performance is affected. Carolyn, do you have any additional comments regarding this question?
Well, I just want to emphasize how important it is to not let something go until it becomes a performance issue on the job. Because what I've seen happen many times is people will have performance issues that are really disability related, not related to their skills and knowledge or their ability to do the work. For maybe they have a lot of absences because their dialysis schedule changed or something, and they're having to miss a lot of days at work or something, something disability related that's impacting their performance markers like attendance or typically it's attendance or just communicating on the job, those kinds of things. You don't want to wait until it's a problem and then say, oh, it's disability related, because that looks to many employers like a cop-out. Acknowledge it. Talk to your supervisor. You'll notice that I'm having struggles with attendance lately, or you'll notice that I'm not getting along with my coworkers as well as I used to, or that I'm having some conflicts, whatever they are, that whatever the performance issue is, have a private conversation with your supervisor or an HR representative and say, this is disability related, and so I probably need to go through the process of requesting an accommodation so that we can work out a solution, and I don't end up in and you don't have a bad impression of me as someone who's not performing appropriately. So take control again, show that you can manage the disability, do it before it becomes a performance issue, have some ideas for how the issue can be accommodated. Not just one idea, because the employer doesn't have to choose your preferred idea. They just have to prefer to use an effective idea. So have some options that you can live with to present, and go from there, because you don't want it to be a situation where you're disciplined for something that really was disability related.
Thank you, Carolyn. And what if you have employment gaps on your resume? Maybe you were out of the workplace because of your disability. How do you explain these gaps? We suggest offering a very brief explanation of how you've overcome your challenges. However, you don't want to share details about what happened or your diagnosis. Instead, focus on how you're capable and ready to excel in this position. Provide specific examples of how you will add value to the employer. So here's an example. I had a medical issue that took me out of the workforce for a couple of years. This issue has now been resolved, and I learned a lot about resiliency and endurance during this time. I'm now fully ready to get back into the workforce and contribute 100% to this role. Let me tell you a little about what I can do. What if I need on-the-job accommodations? According to the ADA, to be qualified for the position, you have to be able to perform the essential job functions. Do your preparation ahead of time and consider what you'll need to successfully complete the job. Put the employee at ease and offer specific low-cost solutions. According to a study by the Job Accommodation Network, most accommodations cost under $500, and many require no cost at all. Assure your employer that you'll need minimum additional supervision on the job. And Carolyn, could you tell a quick story about this?
The one that comes to mind is that there's a classic story about an employer who really had an employee in a wheelchair and really wanted this employee and wanted to make the site accessible and overly accommodated. The bathrooms weren't accessible or something, so they tore down the bathroom and put in a whole new setup or whatever, and really the only thing the person needed was a rope on the handle of the bathroom door. If there was a little rope with a knot in it tied to the handle of the bathroom door, he could have easily gone in and out of the bathroom without any trouble. So it's important to talk to an employer. Educate you as the person with the disability have a responsibility for knowing what the options are, what accommodations will work, and try to think of the ones that are going to have the least impact to your employer. The cheapest ones. They're typically the best ones, and so present those so your disability isn't negatively impacting your performance. You can set yourself up for success by showing that you know how to resolve these problems in a minimal invasive way.
Great, thank you, Carolyn. And a reminder to learn more about disclosure and accommodations, check out the Job Accommodation Network, or JAN, and the EEOC, which is the U.S. Equal Employment and Americans with Disabilities Act website. And they have a list of questions and answers related to disclosure and accommodations. And to sum up, you want to take a proactive approach to your career management for career success. And before we have Legrand join us on the program, Carolyn, could you quickly sum up some of the key points from this program as well?
Well, I just want to emphasize how important it is to have the right attitude and to, even as frustrating as I know it can be when the work site isn't accessible or the potential employer or the interviewer doesn't have the right attitude about disability, and you can sense that even when there's uncomfortable things that you feel legally are inappropriate, you can address those at another time. For the job search, you want to have the most positive attitude you can. You want to take responsibility for solving the problems just to demonstrate that you can. And then you want to toot your horn about that. Try to stay positive. Of course, if it turns out to be a negative experience and you really do believe that someone's not following the law, then there are ways you can address that. But your goal is to find a job, and this is where you've decided this is where you want to work. This is the kind of employment you want. You want to do everything you can to maintain that positive attitude. Know yourself very well so that you can, and practice those two-sentence explanations, those lists of potential cheap accommodations. Practice presenting those to your friends or whatever so that you have those on the tip of your tongue, and can then move on, as Dina says, to talking about the real important stuff, your skills and abilities to do the job.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. And with that, I'd like to invite Legrand Ouabo back to our program. So hello and welcome back to the program, Legrand. Legrand, are you able to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Hi, Legrand. I can hear you now. Thank you for coming back to us here. And Legrand, you have such an interesting story to share. You recently landed a full-time position teaching special education in the DC public schools. However, prior to this position, you encountered many challenges in your job search and career. Could you share your journey with us?
Yes, Diana. Thank you again. In Cameroon, I overcame all odds of having a physical disability and served many years as a lead high school teacher. When I moved to the United States in 2004, I had to start my education and career over since I didn't hold a teaching license in the United States. I earned a bachelor's degree in education and started working as a substitute teacher in Virginia. And I completed my Master of Arts in Teaching at Walden and earned my teaching license. After I became licensed, I applied for full-time teaching position for over 3 years through multiple school districts. But I was turned down despite my exceptional reputation or qualification. I noticed that I was more qualified than the majority of applicants. Yet when I was called for an interview, I felt my interviewer were prejudging me due to my physical disability. After struggling for several years, I was losing all hope in landing a full-time position that would allow me to support my family.
Legrand, how did you start approaching your job search differently and start seeing results?
Okay, as part of my PhD in education program, I attended the National Harvard residency. During the residency, I met you and explained that I felt the challenge I was facing in my job research was due to my disability. and you offer me a different strategy to help me to address my misconception of disability and refer me to webinars and video programs, including a prior recording of disability to ability and the webinars, interview strategies. I started diligently watching the webinars and practicing my interviewing skills using optimal resume interview prep tools. Around the same time, a full-time position opened up in Maryland public school due to a sudden resignation of a teacher, and I was selected for this role.
That's great, but there was a major obstacle that you encountered in this position that led you to resume your job search. What was that obstacle?
Thank you, Dana. I had to commute 3 hours a day to my job, which was extremely difficult for me and my family. I scheduled another career appointment to express my frustration. I wanted to quit, but you encouraged me to continue my effort and at the same time look for other opportunities. I continue to schedule appointments and utilize all tips and resources on the Career Service Center website. Most importantly, I learned new strategies for communicating my strengths to employers and addressing misconception of my disability. You also helped me to prepare a K-12 career fair, which led to an interview for my new position.
And how did you overcome challenges during your interview and showcase your strength and land your current position?
Actually, two major factors contributed to me getting this job. First of all, I went above and beyond to set myself apart from other applicants by developing a 25-minute lesson plan, hosting it to YouTube, and launching the video during my interview. I not only told them what I can do, but I showed them this extra effort set me apart. And the second factor concerned my disability. Since the school did not have an elevator, I was asked how I would get up the stairs of the classroom. In the past, this question would make me angry and frustrated. However, this time, I was well prepared. I offer a confident, calm response and a simple solution that put the employer at ease. I said, I understand your concern, but my physical disability should not be a problem for this role. When I taught students in Cameroon, I was able to go upstairs with little support. Another simple solution would be to move my classroom to the first floor of the building. I impressed my interviewer and was presented a job offer. I now have a full-time position and work 1 block away from my house.
That's great. You really maximize career resources and you addressed your disability and you also stood out through specific samples of your work. That is amazing. And what advice would you give to others with disabilities at Walden?
I will always tell people that life is made of challenges. You must have a mindset of someone who wants to succeed. Use your disability as an advantage and show that you have the potential and the skill employer needs. I struggled for 3 years to find a full-time employment, but I didn't give up. These days, the whole school is observing me and they can see the difference I'm making in the school. So I'm an overcomer. And I would suggest that all people with disabilities should be an overcomer. They should be overcomers.
Wonderful, Legrand. Thank you for joining us today. We wish you the very best as you continue to make a difference in special education and children's lives, and also support Walden's social change mission. And with that, I want to now open it up for questions from our audience. And I know we have so much great information and stories during today's program. And this program will run a little past the hour. We do want to address some of your questions from you, the audience. And while the questions are coming in, Carolyn, if you want to share a quick story, and also Nicole, if there are any questions, you can go ahead and ask those questions as well.
Yes, actually we have quite a few questions,
Okay.
Dina. I think
we do.
First
okay,
one,
wonderful.
Okay, yes. Yep, I've got them all ready to go here. So I think this question would be for Carolyn. What if at the time of discussing accessibility to the venue due to a disability, the employer explains that unfortunately there's nothing else available in the form of accommodating the interviewee? Oftentimes employers can be prejudiced about disability conditions and find a good excuse to eliminate persons, I should say, this person said me, before the interview even begins.
That's unfortunately very true. There are people who are just ignorant about the potential employee that they're losing out on, the great employee they're losing out on. All you can do is be a hard sell that you're confident you're right for the job, and you just want the opportunity to show them that you can do the job. You have solutions to offer for the disability, whatever their assumptions might be. Ask them what those are. What is your concern? If you're getting the impression that they're making something else up, and it really is about the disability, but they're saying, oh, you're probably just not right for the job, or we've got somebody else that we are really thinking about strongly, or you just get the impression that they're just pushing you off. Well, first of all, I think maybe you don't want to work for them. Mm-hmm. But then you can follow up. You know, there are legal avenues that you can address. That doesn't help you get the job right now, and I know you want to spend your energy on finding a job and not confronting an employer who's not willing to work with you. I would mimic what Dina said, to find out where the disability-friendly employers are. Go there.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. Okay, this is probably another one for you, Carolyn. This student says, I've been, this is interesting, diagnosed with narcolepsy, and am on daily medication, of course, to avoid sleep attacks, quote unquote. Is this something I should disclose to my employer from the start?
I would not, unless it's going to impact your job to where they're going to consider it a performance issue. So if people are noticing, and if your medication isn't working as well as you want, and you're nodding off or whatever, yes, you should talk to your employer, just your supervisor, just the immediate supervisor, disclose the situation, but don't go with just the problem, go with answers as well. Mm-hmm. You know, so here are the solutions to how we can address this in the job. Okay, thank you, Carolyn. Okay, Dina, a question for you. This student says, I've been in my current job for 14 years and nearing retirement age. How do I start a new career? And maybe Carolyn too, now that I'm getting to the benefits part, and don't lose my benefits from my current job. So maybe the career change for Dina and the benefits piece for Carolyn. Maybe Dina, do you want to go first?
Sure. It's very common these days that people are considering what we call encore careers. So they may be approaching retirement and looking at their next step and their next career path. I would encourage you to schedule a career advising appointment. We can explore your interests. We mentioned some self-assessments that we do have on the website, and also volunteering as a way to maybe make that transition into an encore career. So everyone's situation is different. And again, if you're looking to keep your benefits, maybe the solution would be to look at virtual volunteering or local volunteering opportunities and maybe bridge into a potential position that way. But we can definitely work with you individually. Visit your My Walden portal and schedule an appointment with Career Services, and we can address your needs and look at your specific individual situation. Carolyn, do you have anything to add about keeping the benefits?
I really don't.
Okay.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I think you answered it appropriately.
Okay. Great.
Thank you, Des. Okay, one more here. My disability has 90% unemployment rate. So what can I do to help find jobs for others? I'm assuming for people on the autism spectrum. Dina?
Yep, autism.
Yeah, I would say become a mentor for others with disabilities. Connect with others through social networking groups or meet up in the local area. So we presented some of those options on the slides here earlier today. But there's, for instance, abilitylinks.org. Where you can find a mentor or you can be a mentor. So there are many mentoring opportunities and ways to help others.
That's a great suggestion. Carolyn, did you want to add anything?
Well, one thing about autism that helps a lot is finding a coach. So that might be a recommendation to a potential employer when you're disclosing autism. If it's that significant that it's going to make that big of a difference in the employment setting, you may want to have a coach, an employment coach, work with you, and there are different resources for those.
That's a great idea. Okay, thank you, ladies. I just want to wrap up to give you all some of the awesome, well, wait, we have one more question here. Wait, I think this is a good one. Post-traumatic stress disorder is often challenging. Is there a plan of action I can take working in a busy environment? Ooh, yeah. That's a hard one.
Yeah, it's case by case. It has a lot to do with what the employer's like and how the PSTD manifests itself. And I'd be happy to talk to you offline about it.
Sure. Thank you.
Because that's a challenging one. Yeah.
Right. Okay, I want to wrap up by we have some awesome feedback for you guys. The presentation was great. It takes out some of the anxiety out of the whole returning to work process. Very inspirational. Thank you all very much. And Legrand as well. Legrand, your experience is indeed a milestone that many can assume and find a way through. And thank you, Legrand. We have many thanks and compliments to Legrand and all of you for sharing your expertise in the area. So with that, I think we'll wrap it up. I'll pass it back to you, Dina.
Thank you. And I just want to mention one quick thing, that Legrand was successful because he really worked very hard. He practiced, he utilized career resources, but he didn't just watch webinars. He was very proactive and he took those extra steps. And working with you, Legrand, and your efforts really paid off because you made such an effort in your job search. So I just want to commend you and encourage others to follow your path to success.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dana. And I give you credit for that as well. You know, you were very helpful.
and we are here in Career Services to help students maximize their career potential. So hopefully your story encourages others to reach out to us. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and conclude our program. And If you have disability-related questions, of course, please contact Walden Disability Services. And Carolyn and her staff are there to assist you, and they can provide some great resources and strategies. And if you need career-related assistance with your job search or career management, visit our site. And we have a special interest area, which includes resources for people with disabilities. So check that out. And to learn more, watch our many webinar programs. Featured here are just 3 you may be interested in: temporary contract and virtual opportunities, strategic volunteering, and telling your career story. So those could be all found in our archived webinars. And if you haven't done so already, please register on our optimal resume system to build your resumes, cover letters, career portfolios, and practice interview skills using the interview prep and view over 100 resume samples. So this is a free system for students and alumni to use. Please maximize this very robust system. And register for other live webinars and cafes on our homepage. And connect with us by joining the Career Services LinkedIn group, following us on Twitter and Facebook, subscribing to our YouTube channel, reading Walden student success stories on our blog, and also using the features of the optimal resume system. You can access everything from our website, and you can also email us at careerservices@waldenu.edu. Here are a few references we referred to during today's program if you'd like to read more. And we'd like to leave you with this final quote from tennis player Martina Navratilova, who says that disability is a matter of perception. If you can do just one thing well, you're needed by someone. We would also like to thank Carolyn Roney and Legrand Ouabo for joining us here today and sharing your wonderful insights with us.